Hello folks, I'm Nathan from the Nerd Social, and I'm going to break down and review the Season 3 finale of Star Trek Discovery. First, some quick spoiler-free thoughts. I like this episode a lot. It was thrilling in parts, heartfelt in others. I don't think this is my favorite episode of the season, but it might be my favorite finale of the past 3 seasons. Season 2 had an epic space battle, and of course, the Red Angel timey-wimey reveal, or Emperor Georgiou going ham on control. So I'll have to review the entire season before I decide if the finale was better. Okay, before I start the spoiler breakdown and review, I want to establish a structure for arranging my thoughts. I don't know if this is going to be the house style, but it's how I'm organizing this video and probably other Star Trek videos. So, because I'm a child of the 80s, I use the word awesome a lot, so I'll point out what I found awesome in this episode. I'll also point out questions. These could be questionable decisions that probably can't be redeemed, or just things I'm curious or annoyed about that may resolve themselves by season 4. Such as, I have questions. Okay, let's get into it. Fair warning, spoilers ahead. So this episode starts off by returning us to the Lithian planet where Culber, Saru, and Sakal were left behind 2 episodes back. Culber is looking at a degrading hollow image of a Gormagander. You may recall that we saw a Gormagander for the first time and the last time in Season 1 of Discovery. Saru is trying to patiently get through to Sakal, and Culber informs Saru that the hollow is collapsing. Then Adira finally finds them, transporting down from Bookship, and the hollow has transformed them to appear as a Zahian. I'm not going to point out a lot of Easter eggs in this breakdown because the finale review is already going to be pretty long. That said, the first time we see a Zahian is the short trek episode Runaway. This is when we met Queen Mahani Ika Hali Kapo, or Poe for short. She shows up again at the end of Season 2 of Discovery. And the last time we saw a Zahian was Dodge's boyfriend, Kaler, who was killed by Romulan Jadvash assassins in the first episode of Star Trek Picard. Going back to the planet scene, we get our first awesome thing in the episode, Hollow Gray. To everyone's amazement, they can see and touch gray, so I guess there's been quite a few advancements in holotechnology over the past 930 years. After this scene, we cut to Starfleet Command, and the first questionable thing about this episode. Osara's on Discovery trying to escape with the ship and the spore drive technology. This is questionable because she is literally in control of a ship surrounded by all the ships at Starfleet headquarters in space dock. It really shouldn't be any sort of challenge for Starfleet, even in diminished capacity. After the excellent space battle at the end of Season 2, I found this battle convoluted and challenging to follow. For some reason, Osara knows some unique information about the shields at Starfleet headquarters itself, and she's targeting the HQ. And Admiral Vance and his team seem genuine in their concern that they'll be destroyed or damaged despite literally being surrounded by more powerful ships. I understand that Discovery was retrofitted and has the newest tech from the 31st century, but this scene doesn't read as plausible given the other equally powerful or more powerful ships Discovery is surrounded by. Back on the bridge, we have our next awesome thing from the episode. Cocky action movie Burnham. So Osara is furious with Burnham for jettisoning Stamets, and the swagger and look on her face just reads as, "You big man, ain't you?" And I love it so much. Osara gets more bad news, as there are reports of her regulators clashing with the bridge crew. After hearing this, Burnham's puckish smile and cheesy line, "We're Starfleet," was so incredible, and I'm so here for more of it. Because we're seeing where the bridge crew is battling the regulators with assistance of the dots controlled by spore data. This brings us to our next awesome thing, Bridge Crew Commandos. It was awesome to see the bridge crew work together as a team. We got a bit of that in the past episode too, and I'm glad they've given them more to do in Season 3. However, the regulators retreat at this point, and Osara wrestles back control by slowly venting the atmosphere, committing a crew to a slow death. It's a bit of a plot contrivance that she decided to slowly vent the atmosphere, but I'm not going to nitpick this. If I do, I'd have to nitpick a lot of fiction where similar conveniences exist. Back at Starfleet Command, Stamets pleads with Admiral Vance to get back on the ship so he can save his family. Still, the Admiral believes Burnham did the right thing and has him taken away. Moments later, Starfleet receives a message from the Navarre to send a fleet to provide support. If I had reviewed the last episode, I would have had seriously questioned Burnham stopping to send a message to her mom while crawling through tubes. It seemed like a weird time to call home, but it pays off in this moment. Back on the Discovery Bridge, Osara orders the Viridian parked outside Starfleet's entrance to vent pesticides to poison the intake of several Federation ships. To stop this, Burnham pleads to speak to Vance, and she convinces him to let Osara and the Discovery go. Osara on the Discovery and the Viridian escape Starfleet, but the Navarre are in pursuit. From here, the episode interweaves between plot A and plot B. Put another way, it switches between the action on Discovery and the emotional story on the Dilithium planet. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to break down the Discovery plot and then the plot on the planet until they merge. This brings me to the next awesome thing in this episode, menacing Osara. Osara comes off as a proper villain in this episode. Obviously, she's threatened and desperate given the failed negotiations with Vance and the pursuing Navarre fleet. However, in her desperation, she comes off as very dangerous, which is fun to watch. At this point in the episode, we cut to a scene in the sickbay. Aurelio, Osara's scientist, and Zare, Osara's lieutenant, are trying to extract the Dilithium planet's location from Cleveland Booker. When Osara arrives with regulators and Burnham in tow, the two men disagree about the severity of methods. Aurelio doesn't want to use the mind control bands he used in the previous episode on Stamets because of Book's empathic nature. He fears it will kill him. After a little villain monologuing, Osara chokes Aurelio to sleep and orders Zare to use the band with Michael watching. Book resists the band, but he's obviously in a lot of pain and near death. Osara taunts Burnham and strongly suggests Michael talk to Book or risk losing everything. Burnham agrees and goes to Book's bedside. But once there, she erects a medical force field around his bed to help aid in their escape. One piece of continuity here that I appreciate is Michael is still limping from being stabbed in her leg in the previous episode. It's a small thing, but sometimes movies and shows make the protagonist unrealistically superhuman in these scenarios. So it's good to see Burnham struggling with this limitation while trying to escape and fight off Osara's regulators. At this point, we cut to the bridge crew trying to survive oxygen deprivation by using emergency respirators, which brings us to the next awesome thing. We get more of Owosekan's backstory. She tells her bridge mates that they should use limited oxygen for themselves because as a child she dove in the Ubunike caves and could hold her breath for at least 10 minutes by the time she was 8. This, coupled with the information from season 2 that she grew up as a Luddite, really has me curious to learn more about her life. The season has done more with the bridge crew, although they primarily focused on Detmer. I hope the writers continue this trend in season 4 and we learn more about Reese, Bryce, and Nielsen. As a quick aside, the Ubunike caves are in current day Nigeria, so this confirms that Owo is from this region. It's impossible to tell if it's still Nigeria during this time. The only thing we know about Africa from Star Trek canon is that Uhura is from the United States of Africa. Before the time jump, Owo would have been a contemporary of Uhura, so maybe she's from United Africa. However, Uhura knew some Swahili, which suggests she's from East Africa and Nigeria is in West Africa. We never find out in Star Trek canon if United Africa is the entire continent or just regions. The writers in the 60s never really filled in this information because they obviously were not interested. TNG era or modern Trek writers haven't had much interest either because we receive no new canon about what is happening on the continent. Several stories have been set on Earth, on every other continent, including Antarctica, over the past 35 years. Hopefully, given that one of the producers on Discovery is a Nigerian and there's a Nigerian in the cast, the writers will rectify this issue soon. At this point in the episode, Burnham uses a regulator's communicator to send a shipwide message that only Tilly can understand. Tilly realizes that Michael is suggesting that they blow up one of the detached warp nacelles to drop them out of warp so the fleet from Navarre can catch up. Meanwhile, Michael and Book are still battling regulators and Zare has caught up and joins the fight. Michael escapes into the ship's internals and we get a view into what some of the retrofits look like in the turbolift system. Apparently there's a lot of programmable matter dynamically creating paths for the turbolifts to move people around the ship. This entire sequence reminded me of the droid foundry scenes with Anakin on Geonosis in the Star Wars Attack of the Clone movie. Michael drops down into a passing turbolift, takes out a regulator and reprograms it to take her to the computer core. Expecting this plan, Osara is waiting for Michael and fights with her for control of the room. Meanwhile, Owo places the bomb in the warp nacelle because at this point she's the only crew member from the bridge still conscious because of her breathing ability. However, after placing the bomb, she passes out near the nacelle and in the blast radius. After the bomb goes off, the ship is pushed out of warp as planned. Elsewhere on the ship, Book is still battling regulators and Zare. Zare nearly kills Book and while doing so taunts Book about grudge by calling her a fat cat. Book then gains the strength to overcome Zare, throwing him from the lift and yelling she's a queen after his falling body. This leads me to the next awesome thing about this episode. That line at that moment was excellent. I'm not a cat person, but seeing Book's devotion to that cat over the season, I'm definitely a fan of Grudge now. Back in the core room, after the ship was pushed out of warp, Osara orders the Viridian Detractor Discovery inside. She also gains control of the fight with Burnham. Osara pushes her into the programmable matter of the computer core where she was absorbed. Burnham breaks free, kills Osara, and gets off one last, somewhat cheesy action hero line, and coughs up a lot of programmable matter computer chips. Once in control of the room, Michael resets the computer systems, restores life support to all decks, transports all the regulators off the ship, and orders the crew to report to the bridge. The bridge crew starts to regain consciousness, and we find out that all was pulled from the blast by the spore data dot, but it did so sacrificing itself. This brings me to the second questionable thing about this episode, Tilly vacating the captain's chair. Until he gets to the bridge with the rest of the crew, Burnham says she, Book, and Aurelio have a plan. And instead of telling Burnham to implement the plan, she vacates the captain's chair so that Michael can take control to execute the plan. I understand there's a tick and clock because the Viridian has started attacking Discovery now that Osara is dead. However, Tilly could have just told Burnham to implement the plan, given that they've established many times that she trusts her. Adding this beat of her giving up the chair just makes Tilly seem unsure of herself or embarrassed that the ship was taken. This storytelling choice doesn't treat the character fairly because she acquitted herself well during the crisis in the places where she had control. After taking command, Michael explains that Aurelio believes that given Book's empathic ability, he can talk to the spores and jump them back to the lithium planet. This doesn't really make sense to me because I thought Themis' implants allowed him to navigate like the tardigrades, not talk to the spores. I thought he could always talk to the spores, just not direct them well, but I might be misremembering. Honestly, Star Trek is full of technobabble solutions like this, so I'm gonna let it go. The other part of her plan is to eject the warp core and explode the Viridian from the inside so they can jump seconds before the explosion destroys them too. Doesn't quite make sense to me either because it's not clear why they can't just jump out of the Viridian without the explosion. Still, I'll let this go too and assume that they are held in place by the larger ship's tractor beam and need the explosion to set them free. The problem is Book has never jumped this ship before, and when Michael gives the command to jump, Book tries, but they don't move. The next thing we see is the Viridian exploding from the inside. Back on the lithium planet, Saru is still gently trying to get through to Skull as the hollow deteriorates and radiation levels increase. This brings me to the next awesome thing. The scenes between Saru and Skull are very touching. Doug Jones and Bill Irwin do an excellent job here. Jones shows her warmth, and Irwin is trying to communicate the intelligence of a 100-plus-year-old man and the innocence and the fragility of a child left alone for 100-plus years. Skull has given up on the outside because the Federation rescue he was promised never came. Saru explains that the Federation could not come because of the burn, but withholds his suspicion that Skull caused the burn. Saru encourages Skull to face his fears manifest in the folklore monster and go through the chain door. The door apparently leads to a room where the hollow can be deactivated and they can exit the simulation. This leads Gray to fearing that he'll be disconnected again, unable to be seen or touched. His fear is understandable, but this leads me into my next question. He says he is stuck and Tull is stuck. This is more of a question than a questionable thing. Still, I found this very confusing because Admiral Tull died just like any other Trill host. His memory should have been transferred to Gray with the symbiote like all other Trill transfers. Based on the previous episodes, it's not explained why Adira is seeing Gray. Still, it's suggested that it's related to them being human hosts and their connection to Gray. No other past hosts have appeared to Adira, so I hope this question is cleared up at some point during season 4 because it's not clarified in this episode. Anyway, Gray's distress is followed by another awesome thing, Colbert consoling and assuring Gray. Colbert promises Gray that he, Stamets, and Adira will find a way for him to be truly seen. This beat is lovely and touching, and I assume it's meant to have a literal meaning inside the show and a symbolic meaning outside the show. Gray is a trans character played by a trans actor. Many in the LGBTQ community are marginalized and feel unseen. Once a call turns off the hollow environment, he plays a recording of what happened over 100 years ago. And as I suspected from the last episode, the anguish of seeing his mother die is what sets Sakal off and what caused the burn because he has a subspace connection to the lithium. He's surrounded by the lithium planet, and I assume the planet acted as a resonator for his powers when he was emotionally distraught. As a very Star Trek answer to the burn, akin to going back in time to get whales from the past to speak to a space probe. I don't know if it's the perfect reveal, but I like it better than something or someone causing the burn for nefarious reasons. The message here is that even when people are pulled apart by natural occurrences, distrust and disconnection can happen. No matter how advanced we become, we need to actively work to remain connected to one another. We then see a hollow recording left by Sakal's mother, asking the rescuers to take care of her son and bring him back to Kaminar. Sakal feels regret for the burn, but Saru, in his same warm fashion, assures Sakal that the accident was not his fault. The ship starts to break apart on the planet, and it's unclear if they will survive until they're hailed by Burnham because, of course, they survived the explosion of the Viridian and the book was able to jump them to the planet. What follows are a series of epilogue scenes for the episode and the season, starting with Discovery being welcomed back to the Federation and the Starfleet headquarters. On a brigade of starships is lined up on either side of the entrance to the distortion field. Then we get the next awesome element in this episode. When Samus is reunited with his family, he embraces them, but he also catches Burnham out of the corner of his eye, and it's evident that all is not forgiven. While I don't want to see any lasting strife between the crew, this is great because it's more realistic and consistent with how this character would react. And it sets up potentially compelling storytelling between the two of them in Season 4. Then we see Owo, with the assistance of Jet Reno, revive the Spore Data Dot. Burnham tells us via voiceover that the Trill have rejoined the Federation, and the Navarre are in talks to rejoin. Saru has taken a leave of absence to consider his next steps and has gone back to Kaminar to help Sakal. And Burnham runs into Sahil from That Hope Was You Part 1. Apparently he has found his way to this Federation as well. If you recall, Burnham granted him a field commission of acting communication chief, and he's since been promoted to lieutenant, which is a nice little beat. The Admiral asks to see Burnham, and when she arrives, he presses her to take command of the Discovery because of Saru's leave of absence. Apparently, the Discovery will be tasked with delivering dilithium to worlds all over the Federation and other planets. Michael is reluctant, but because of the urgency, he needs her to answer immediately. This leads me to my next question, and this isn't something I find questionable, this is just something I'm concerned about, and I hope doesn't mean we're losing Saru. By this, I don't mean that I think Burnham doesn't deserve the captain's chair, which I'll get back to in a second. I mean, I hope we don't lose Saru as a regular character. Doug Jones is one of the best things about this show. That said, I want to reiterate that I'm not saying that Burnham doesn't deserve the captain's chair. I know this will make a lot of toxic fanboys upset, but they've been sore since Anika Martin Green was announced as the show's lead. You need to either get over it or stop watching Discovery. Burnham is the POV character of the show. Sonequa is first on the call sheet. She was always going to be in the captain's chair eventually, and waiting 3 seasons is enough. I even heard some commentators, I don't think are toxic, but are white, suggest that Burnham should get the captain's chair in the last season. Why? Why should the black woman have to wait until the last season to become captain? Sisko was promoted to captain at the end of his 3rd season too. Which brings me to a separate but related point. Why do the black POV characters have to wait until they earn the rank of captain? I'm not saying that the story of a commander earning the rank of captain can't be interesting. However, counting Star Trek Picard, there have been 7 live-action Star Trek series. So far, the only time showrunners seem to think that it's appropriate and appealing that POV characters earn the captain's rank is when they're black. Anyway, all that to say, Michael does take the promotion, and the crew finally gets new uniforms. Everyone seems pretty happy about this, except of course for Stamets, which is, again, awesome and pretty funny. From this scene, it seems Adira also received the commission and becomes an ensign. This leads me to my next question. Is Tilly still an ensign? If she hasn't received the promotion, this seems crazy to me. From the scene, it's hard to tell, but her uniform looks just like Adira's. Even if she still is an ensign, it seems she's also still XO because she's the one giving Burnham the status report. Given all that she's been through and the bravery and ingenuity she's shown in this and previous seasons, she should be promoted to at least Lieutenant Junior grade. This brings me to my last awesome thing for the episode, Burnham's catchphrase, "Let's fly." Of course, it's a callback to earlier in the season when Saru was trying to find his own, and I'm sure a lot of people will complain about this undercutting Saru, and I don't care. It's still awesome, and it doesn't mean Saru won't eventually find his own. It's glorious seeing a black woman with natural hair in a Star Trek show's captain's chair. I'm looking forward to Captain Burnham's adventures in Season 4. The episode ends with this quote from Gene Roddenberry, which I think ties very nicely into the entire season's themes about connections. Since my first review is also the last episode of the season, I'll be doing a full retrospective of Season 3, examining the highs and lows and the overall themes. Well, until then, I've told you what I think about the finale. Now we want to hear from you. Comment down below, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.